Hi there, I'm Catherine Wiseman, founder of Fulfilled Life Coaching, and you are here today for part 1 in our 4-part mini-series called Living by Design. I hope by now you've had a chance to watch the short introduction to this program because I share a little bit of insight into the story and how this program came about. If you haven't seen it yet, I'd encourage you to click on the link in the email above this video. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see the introduction on my YouTube channel. Otherwise, you're welcome to click onto my website where you'll be able to watch the intro. I look forward to seeing you on the inside. I call this living by design a God thing because I firmly believe that each and every one of us have been uniquely created for a specific purpose. And if you're longing to find true fulfillment in your life, you'll find it by living your life by design. So what does it mean to live your life by design? This means that you know who you are, you know why you're here, and you have a God-given plan to action it out. Now, if all of us were living this way, knowing who we were, why we're here, and acting it out, we'll all be living really happy and fulfilled lives. But many of us struggle with this. And so if you're struggling with any of these statements, you're in great company, and I'm really glad you're here because this is what this program is here to do. It's to shine light on these 3 points. So when you live your life by design, what you're actually doing is you are choosing to purposefully and intentionally live the life that you have been uniquely created to live. Now, in order to do this, we need to believe this truth, that God has created you by exquisite design to fulfill a much needed purpose on this earth. There are many needs on the earth today, and you, my friend, are an answer to one of those needs. And the need that you are the answer for is intricately tied up with the specific dream, calling, and purpose that has been woven into the fiber of your being. So what's the alternative? What's the opposite of a life by design? Well, I call this a life by default. And it's the life that I've certainly led for many years, and it's the life that a lot of you may notice that you've been living too. So now I'm going to take a moment to give you the really condensed version of my story. For many years, I grew up learning the art of competing and comparing myself to other people. I would take the best in everybody else, and I would try and be like that. I was addicted to the approval of people. I was an addicted people pleaser. Now, when you've been living your life this way, what happens is very soon you have absolutely no idea who you are because you're so busy trying to be like everybody else. And so by the time I got to the end of school and I had to make a decision on a career, I had no idea who I was. And so again, I looked to the world, I looked for approval, and I had enough points to get in to study medicine. So I decided that that's what I would do because it's a noble, good thing to do. And the further I got into my medical training, I recognized and realized that other people around me had an absolute inward desire and passion to study medicine that I just didn't seem to have. And more, it became clear to me that I was actually trying to live someone else's life and not my own. Now, there were parts of the medical degree that I really enjoyed and loved. It was incredibly interesting. It was incredibly stimulating. It was incredibly difficult. And so because of pride and seeking approval and wanting to please others, I felt that it wasn't an option for me to drop out. So I pushed through. I finished my course. I even practiced medicine for a period of 10 years because then I felt like I'd put all this effort into it. I better use what I've been given. And there were moments where I absolutely loved it, but there were also moments where I realized that this really wasn't my thing. And so we finally, after 10 years of practicing, we immigrated as a family to Australia from South Africa. And in order to continue practicing here, I needed to retrain and redo a lot of exams and study because of my history. And anyway, long story I won't share today. But I realized that this was an opportunity for me to try and see and discover what it is that I really wanted to do, you know, what was on the inside of me to do. And so I started this search, and because I had no idea how to listen to what was on the inside of me, and I was so well practiced in listening to the world, I was at a loss. So I went back and I started studying, and I sat part one of the AMC exams, and I cried every day while I had to study for them. I felt like I was just stuck in this prison of having to do what I really didn't want to do. And so fast forward a few years, I decided to not continue down that pathway and spend some years trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was a frustrated mess. And so I'm sitting on the couch one day with a friend, and she says to me, you know, why don't you go and see a life coach to help sort this out? I'd never heard of coaching, so I Googled life coaching, and I wasn't convinced. It looked very fluffy and airy-fairy. But she said, no, she knows someone. He has a scientific mind, and I had this medical mind, so I thought, yep, that sounds good. I'll go and see this person. And boy, oh boy, was I in for a surprise. I had no idea about the weight of my warped mindset and unhelpful mindsets and unhelpful filters and limiting beliefs that I was living with. And once I started working through all of these, it was as though a whole new world opened to me. And it was this world of discovery into who I was and why I'm here. And I loved it so much that I've since gone on and trained and studied coaching, and I'm now absolutely doing the very thing that I feel I've been designed for you, and am so much more fulfilled, passionate, making a difference to others far more than I was ever as a doctor. And I know that and believe that for each and every one of us, you know, when you start walking into the very reason why God created you, you will just shine your light most brightly for Him. So what happens to us when we don't choose to step up and live our life by design? What this means is then we're choosing actually to live by default. And when we live by default, we have no clear sense of direction for ourselves. We drift. We often settle for mediocre. We carve out comfort zones for ourselves. And inside these comfort zones, we feel safe. So we play it safe and we stay small. And by doing this, we stagnate. If we were honest, we would notice that our light is shining dimly. Yet we just don't see how it is possible to turn the dial up to shine brightly again. When we live by default, we may have dreams, but we believe that these dreams are just dreams. We believe that they're not possible. And so we continue to set small goals. And when we do have the courage to start stepping out, we recognize it's scary when we step out. And the moment we bumped, we knocked down, we decided it's not worth it. So we give up chasing the dream. And we often turn and grab onto someone else's lesser dream. Now, if you're anything like me, I was constantly seeking assurance from others, constantly competing and comparing, which is exhausting. We often feel like a fake. We feel like the victim of our circumstances, and we don't ever find fulfillment. Now, I don't know about you, but this does not sound like the life that God intended for us to live. So the truth is, we all need a God-given dream. We all need a purpose to follow. What is yours? And what are you doing to action it out? So if you haven't had a moment to watch my introduction yet, I share about how God dropped this little story into my heart, and I've written this book which I'll share with you later in the course. But inside this story, which was a metaphor, I recognized that He had given me a blueprint strategy for how to step out and live the life that He designed us for. And that is what I'm going to take you through now in this program. Having said this, this is not a formula, but it is a blueprint that if we take each step and work through each step individually for ourselves, we will be much clearer on what our life by design looks like. So the first step in this process is to become aware of our comfort zones. You see, when we're aware of the places we often spend where we are comfortable, then we can start looking beyond that and recognize that possibly the reason why we're not living our life by design is because we're stuck here and playing it small inside our comfort zones. So we all have comfort zones. This is by no means anything to feel ashamed about, and I'm not judging anyone here at all. But let's take a moment and work through these next questions. So pause the videos when you need to, grab a pen of paper so that you can write down your notes, and let's start on the first exercise of figuring out where our comfort zones are. So the first thing I'd like you to do is to take a moment to write down all the things that you do regularly that you are comfortable doing. Think about the places you're comfortable to be in, what people are you comfortable hanging out with, and think of all the everyday general stuff that you do that fills the hours of your day. And then take a moment to write down anything that comes to mind. And then once you've got your list of the places and the things that you're comfortable with, think about what all these things are currently giving you. How do they serve you on a day-to-day basis? And make note of what real value these things bring to your day every day. The second step is a bit more difficult than the first one, and it is becoming aware of our desires, our dreams, and our passions. Now, you'll remember I shared with you in my story that I was so addicted to competing and comparing and seeking approval and pleasing others that I had no idea how to listen to what was on the inside. And so in order to discover our desires and our passions, we do need to take a moment and to tune into what's on the inside of our hearts. And I have a couple of exercises inside here which are going to help you with this process of figuring out what's on the inside without needing to look to the outside to try and work it out. Okay, so you're going to take out your paper and pen again, and you're going to take a moment thinking about all the big one-day purpose dreams you have been having or you may have had in the past. You know, the ones where you go, oh, one day it would be lovely to do this, and one day I wish I could do that. And maybe for you it's the same dream you've had for years. Now, if you're anything like me, you'll sit down and it might just be blank. Be encouraged, take your time. This might not just roll out and fall out on the piece of paper, but I want you to start dreaming like you were a child, almost free-falling. Don't consider whether something sounds silly or whether it's possible or probable. Don't think about, I don't know how to do this, or there are no finances, or I don't know whether I'll find the time. Just put all of that aside for a moment and just dream purely for the sake of dreaming about your unique desires. If you're still struggling to think of anything, spend time with God and ask Him to reveal to you His dreams for you. And then Scripture says that when we ask, we'll receive. So expect to hear from Him. Pay attention to all the dreams or any sort of visions in your mind's eye or wandering thoughts, anything that you have, even if it sounds ridiculous or sounds really far-fetched. Just get used to this process of intentionally dreaming and write down whatever comes to mind. You can take time doing this exercise at any time, whether you're driving in your car, whether you're making dinner. Just tune into listening to what's on the inside of your heart. The third step in our awareness step is to get a clear view of what it is that you really want. Now, you may have heard the saying before that if you can see it, then it's available to you. And so for many of us, practicing this whole process of visualizing ourselves walking out our dream, doing the very thing that's in our dreams or that we dream of, actually will help us to see how it is possible to step out into these dreams and to build up an excitement and a desire in us so that we recognize that we do have what it takes to step out into these dreams. So I'm quite excited about this next exercise, and spend some time. Don't rush through these exercises. I know you're going to get a new episode every day, but you'll have them, go back to them, spend a bit of time in the next weeks and months pondering on each of these steps, and it will all unfold for you. Now, this is actually a really fun exercise. I'd like you to find a comfy chair, sit back, take a few deep breaths in and out, and spend a bit of time. You need a bit of time for this one. But I'd like you to close your eyes and visualize yourself actually living out the God-purpose dreams that you have for yourself. Can you clearly visualize yourself actually doing the things that you dream about? So as you close your eyes and you look, I want you to see as much detail as you can. What do you see? And maybe, you want a pen and paper next to you so that you can write down notes or draw pictures so that you can remember all of this. What do you hear? What emotions are you feeling? Or what sensations do you feel? Where are you? And what are you specifically doing in order to action out this dream? Because when you can clearly see yourself actioning something out, you are much more likely to, in the physical, to step out and to realize these dreams. So the last of the 4 awareness steps is the awareness of the cost of living by default, or of staying in our comfort zone. Now, we went through a bit of the cost earlier on in this session, and it's really important to go back for yourself and to make a list for yourself of the cost of not stepping out into the purpose that God has for you. The reason why we need to be clear on the cost is going to become very apparent in the next few sessions as we go. So once again, do yourself a favor, spend the time, and be intentional and purposeful about getting clear on the cost of staying small and playing it mediocre. So your steps to action are to ask yourself this: if in 1 or 3 or 5 years' time you are exactly where you are now, how would that feel? It's a bit like Groundhog Day. If you're doing the same thing over and over and in 5 years' time nothing's changed, what does that look like for you? Then I want you to do this exercise, which helps us to make quite a big mind shift. So take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. And on the left-hand side, I'd like you to focus on what is actually painful about your comfort zone. Write down why it will be painful for you to stay there long term. And then on the other side of the page, I'd like you to focus on what is going to be really pleasurable and fulfilling about actually stepping out and doing the very thing that God has intended for you, the dreams that He has placed on your heart to do. And then once you've spent a bit of time and you've worked through that exercise, I'd like you to consider this. Is it an option for you to carry on playing it safe? And could it be that you actually have what it takes to live out your big God dreams? And to remind you that when you live your life by design, what this means is that you are choosing to purposefully and intentionally live the life that you have been uniquely created to live. So this brings us to the end of part 1 in the series. I want to just leave you with this, that you do have what it takes to walk out the life that God planned for you. Scripture is full of passages that tell us that we have everything inside of us that we need to walk out the life that God planned for us. We know that God has plans for us, and that these plans are to prosper us and to give us a hope and a future. We know that God supplies us with everything we need for each circumstance we step into. So I hope these first awareness steps have got your minds turning, and that you're feeling a bit excited about the life that God has designed you for. And I look forward to sharing the next steps with you in the next 3 sessions. See you then. Cheers.